easily
And if
enough.
there isn't room, I can just go to that wellness room, right? That's what that's for?
You can have a play area for Ainsley, just come in every day.
In fact, she was left here today and she was sort of like, Mom, I don't know why we don't do that more often. That's fun.
I do. I know why.
Because nobody got anything done. It's good, a little bit of
Perfect. All right, thanks.
levity, a little bit of excitement. Artwork, motivational artwork on the walls.
She's got some, Dutch marriage.
She, I was telling Jolie, she probably had
Yeah, yeah. Right.
Are you talking about Christina being out? It's not so funny whenever my coworkers out. Planning for next week, especially because him and I like carpool. So I'm like, just letting you know what our schedule is.
There's a tornado warning, you're gonna tell us, right? Alright.
Yeah. Yeah. Yep. I waited, and I usually wait until it's like the day he's traveling, like when he's coming home or something, so it's he is.
I don't know about that. They've done a pretty good job with it.
And I'm expecting it
Well,
myself,
just don't let us
so I'll
sit
be
here and
bringing
try
my
to-
work phone with me on my trip. I'm going to Peru to go see Machu Picchu. We're doing an Amazon tour. Yeah.
Is that the trip you're coming back and we're gonna make you like
Yeah.
land and then go to the meeting?
Yeah.
It's in the same time zone.
Yeah.
It's in the same time, it's almost the same time zone, at least it's like same side of the,
Yeah. I'll have one night before, so it'll be good. Thank goodness coffee is a thing.
yes. All right. We are a little past 7 o'clock, so I'm gonna call tonight's city council meeting to order. And Jolene, could we have a roll call, please?
Councilmember Erickson is absent tonight. Councilmember Husnick,
Here.
Councilmember Valento,
Here.
Councilmember Roberts.
Here.
Mayor Bain.
Here, I'd like to invite everyone to rise and join us for the Pledge of Allegiance. Council, we have an agenda before you this evening. I will entertain a motion to approve or any changes.
I'll make a motion to approve the agenda.
We have a motion. Is there a second?
Second?
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor signal by saying aye.
Aye.
Oppose, and our agenda is approved. Our next item this evening is open forum. Open forum is any interested party's opportunity to address council on any topic of your choosing. And is there anybody signed up for open forum this evening? There is not. Nobody signed up. Is there anybody in the room tonight that would like to speak in open forum? All right, not seeing anybody come forward. Is there anybody online, Jolene?
There's no observers online this evening, Mayor.
Okay, with that, we will close open forum and bring agenda back to council. Council, for your consideration tonight is the consent agenda. We have tonight consent agenda items 6A through 6M. I will entertain a motion or any changes.
I will make motion to approve consent agenda A through M.
There's a motion, is there a second?
I'll second.
We have a motion and a second, and all those in favor signal by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Oppose, and our consent agenda is approved. Okay, our next item this evening on our regular agenda is item 7A, consideration of MnDOT State Fiscal Year 2025 Airport Grants. And I believe, Silas, you are kicking us off on this tonight.
Thank you, Mayor Bain and members of council for the opportunity to discuss with you the state funding grant offers that MnDOT Aeronautics has offered the city of Forest Lake for improvement projects at the Forest Lake Airport. The state of Minnesota for state fiscal year 2025 has offered grant funding to the city of Forest Lake for 3 projects at the airport. The 3 projects include a 300-foot extension to runway 1331 design, an associated grant for a 300-foot extension to the parallel taxiway to runway 1331 that coincides with the runway extension, And then the third grant offer that the state offered was for completion of a clear zone acquisition plan. So I'll go ahead and detail all three of the projects here for council. What MnDOT is looking for is acceptance of the funding by August 31st that the City of Forest Lake intends to pursue each project. So feel welcome to stop me as I discuss any of the projects here to ask any questions that you have. So I'll start with the 300-foot extension to runway 1331. So in 2021, the City of Forest Lake and the airport completed a master plan update. As part of that master plan update, an analysis of the length of the runway was completed. The current length is 2,700 feet by 75 feet wide. And what the master plan did is, in accordance with FAA runway length advisory circular standards, identified what the recommended runway length for the airport should be based on the current aircraft that are operating at the airport. So what that study concluded is that the recommended length for the runway is 3,000 feet. So where aircraft require the most length of runway is during takeoff conditions. And with the current length at 2,700 feet, certain aircraft are making load concessions so that they can get up in the air safely with the length of runway that exists, or during certain periods of severe weather, they are not able to operate safely at the airport. So by completing a 300-foot extension of the runway, what that project will do was increase the operational safety for pilots that are operating at the airport. So for this particular project, what MnDOT has put forth is in state fiscal 2025, so the state fiscal year runs July 1st through June 30th, they recommended that the city complete design and bid administration, and then in state fiscal 2026, MnDOT will provide grant funding for construction. So they set this up this way to kind of break up the dollars amount that the city is requesting, knowing that the state funds are limited for projects moving forward. So for state fiscal 2025, for design only, the estimated total project cost is $175,000, and the state share would be 95%, and the city share would be 5%. And then the construction cost estimate for state fiscal 26 is $900,000, which again would be a 95% state, 5% local cost participation. So for state fiscal 25, the estimated local share is $8,750 for design and bid administration. And then in 26, the estimated local share for construction would be $45,000. So I'll pause there if anyone has questions or comments about the proposed project.
Is there any harm if something were to happen, either us city looking at airport fund balance, us just deciding sequencing of projects, if we were to in 2025 do the first portion but then not be committed to pulling the trigger in 2026, is there any harm in us unbundling or creating some distance between those? Or would that be in bad form and we really need to think of these as two sequential projects?
So if the city moves forward with design and then tells MnDOT that we'd like to postpone construction, the design is still valid until the city says, okay, now we're ready, to cover the local share to move forward with construction. So there aren't any penalties for not pursuing a construction grant in 2026 if that's the direction from the city.
Is part of that design also bid administration? Conceivably, if you're holding off time frame, you're not going to execute on that part of it, right?
Correct.
Is that a large portion of the project, or is it?
It's not a large portion. It's bid advertising, which is covered locally,
Right.
which isn't a huge cost. And then it's Bolton and Mank to answer any questions from contractors during the bidding process. And then a bid opening, which the costs for a bid administration are very small compared to the total cost of the project.
Okay, and I'm not sure if I feel strongly about that. I'm just trying to understand what our options are in sequencing that, so thank you.
And before we went out to bid, I think there would be consensus about whether or not the city would entertain a construction grant in 2026. And if there's a different direction, we would likely not bid the project, because why incur those costs if you know you're not going to follow up with a construction grant, and just hold the plans and specs on the shelf until the city would be ready to move forward.
Understood. Council, I jumped in with questions on this one. Any other questions related to this component of the project? Any thoughts? All right. Go ahead.
And then, so the second grant, like I mentioned, is the associated 300-foot extension of the taxiway A to become a full parallel to the extended runway. So very similar to the 300-foot runway extension, MnDOT has provided grant funding for design and bid administration for that project, and then would follow up in 2026 with a construction grant. So the funding participation for the taxiway extension is the same, 95.5. So the estimated cost for design for the taxiway extension is $75,000, and then the estimated construction cost being $500,000. So the estimated local share for state fiscal '25 for the design and bid administration would be $3750, and then for construction would be $25,000 in state fiscal '26. Any questions
What
or?
was that last number? Sorry, for our portion of the actual.
25,000, my apologies, Councilmember. Any questions on the state grant offer for the taxiway extension design? All right, and then the last project that MnDOT provided a grant for is for completion of a clear zone acquisition plan. So MnDOT has a policy that they, highly recommend that airport sponsors own and fee all the land under the clear zone. So there's a graphic in the packet there that kind of depicts what the clear zone is. So what that is, it's a trapezoidal shape, that's off the end of each runway that serves the purpose of the protection of people and property, so that there's not, congregation of people, there's not a home, there's not, large groups of people gathering in the event there's an aborted takeoff or an incident with the landing. So the MnDOT policy, states that any airport that does not own and fee all the land under the clear zone, is subject to then not receiving as much state funding as they could. So in 2022, MnDOT came out with the funding prioritization, which is also included in your packet, that scores each project. So currently, the way it sits with Forest Lake is that on the runway 31, the south end, the city owns all the land under the clear zone for the existing 2,700-foot length and then even a 300-foot extension. But on the north end, Fenway Avenue cuts through a portion of the MnDOT clear zone. So MnDOT also understands that it's not feasible for each airport sponsor to own all the land under the clear zone for infrastructure reasons, cost reasons, a multitude of reasons. So for those airports, MnDOT allows them to submit a clear zone acquisition plan, which will request an exemption to their policy. So if the city of Forest Lake moves forward with this project, it'll request an exemption from MnDOT to then allow the airport to have better opportunity to receive funding moving forward. So that's kind of the proposed project with completion of a clear zone acquisition plan. It again would follow a 95% state, 5% local share, and the estimated project cost for completing that plan is $10,000, with the local share being $500. Are there any questions on the clear zone acquisition plan?
And that's just that area on the south end or the southeast end, right? Past the extension of the runway.
Correct. So on the south end, as you can see in the graphic, Forest Lake already owns the land underneath the existing and the proposed clear zone. It's on the north end where you can see, that outer portion where Fenway Avenue runs through. And that's the area that Forest Lake would be requesting an exemption to MnDOT for their policy for stating there's a public road that cuts through there. And from the conversations we've had from MnDOT, they just need to see an exemption request come through. And then that'll allow Forest Lake projects to score higher moving forward with the completion and approval of this plan.
I want to make sure I understand. There's two components to this part. The first part is establishing the clear zone to the north, because today there's nothing, right?
So it already exists.
Yeah.
And MnDOT is already aware that it doesn't meet their policy of the city owning all the land under it. All Forest Lake is doing is just requesting an exemption to their policy. Because let me switch the screen here to the next page.
That little section right there.
The
Why
section
it
to the
matters
north
is for-
exists right now,
Huh?
too? The section to the north exists right now?
It all exists except for they don't actually own this little
Okay.
piece right here.
Okay.
Yeah, it's the
That's all it is.
2.3 acres. But why it matters is if you guys go to the last page in my packet, there's the MnDOT Aeronautics State Funding Prioritization. So what MnDOT does is they score every project that's submitted on the CIP, and if it achieves a certain score, it receives funding, and if it doesn't get funding. So what the Forest Lake right now is losing 15 points because, you know, they don't own all the clear zone and fee, and they don't have this clear zone acquisition plan on file. So by completing this project, every Forest Lake project moving forward is gonna score 15 points higher. And why that matters is projects, the further you get out from the runway center line, score less points on the prioritization model here. But by gaining those 15 points, it's gonna better allow Forest Lake to compete for these other projects, you know, as you move forward with development at the airport. So what MnDOT, oh, go ahead, council member.
No, go ahead.
Oh, I was just gonna say, so what MnDOT is looking for is just a response from the city by the end of the month that they're gonna move forward with all three projects, a combination of the three, so that they know to secure the funding for Forest Lake. And then the next steps is Bolton and Mank will bring back to council proposals for each project, and we'll work with the city on getting grant funds for each.
So you're looking for a motion for the design work is what you're looking for, right, Silas?
A motion that the city is going to move forward and accept the grant offers from MnDOT so that they secure the funding.
For tonight's purposes, but just for the planning portion of it, or planning and construction?
Just for the runway and taxiway design only, and then for the acquisition plan. Construction will be another discussion when state fiscal 26 starts.
Just a question on that clear zone. If you can go back to that map real quickly. On the other side of Fenway, so I guess that'd be the west side of Fenway, that is private property, is it not? And does that limit anyone to build any structures on that piece of property?
Correct.
And we've talked to that property owner, they're okay, they realize they are not able to, even at this point, to build anything on that land?
I'm not aware if the property owner has been informed of anything that they can't build on there. It may be within the zoning ordinance for the city, so I'd have to double check that, Councilmember Roberts, to see. So zoning is a different animal than clear zone, where there's a zone A and a zone B. If portion of that property is in zone A, then you are correct, they would not be able to construct a facility. If they're in zone B, then they are able to construct.
No, so it has to stay completely clear, or is there just a height restriction there, do you know?
For the zoning or
Yeah, for that little section that we don't own in that safety zone there.
Yeah, zoning is more restrictive than the clear zone, so I would have to check what the zoning ordinance states are any restrictions over that parcel.
So we kind of got ourselves in a jam 15 years ago, and it cost us $1 million because we did almost the same thing, and then that property was not able to be built on, and we were in a lawsuit, if I remember correctly. So I guess before approving this or signing off, I want to make sure that we've had that conversation, and they know they can't build, and whatever is required.
Years ago, I know there was some conversation with the owner there because they allowed us to cut some trees down in that area there. That's all part of the horseshoe factory there, I believe. So I know there's been, way back when, there has been some conversation with them about just knocking a couple trees down because they were up into that zone. And it wasn't an issue at that time,
Well,
so.
knocking a couple of trees down and then saying you can't build on your land are two different things, so I think
Well,
some clarity on that would.
Silas, I believe there's two zones off the end of the runways that exist today, right?
Correct.
And those are called A and B?
Correct, so
Can you
zone A.
explain what A and B mean today, so they understand that?
Sure. So off each ends of the runway, there's a zoning ordinance that already exists for the city of Forest Lake. And the airport is zoned for a 3,300-foot runway length, even though they're only 2,700 feet. To kind of allude to Councilmember Roberts, is so that the land around the airport is protected, so that, you know, if the city did decide to extend the runway even further, that there isn't any development in place that would restrict that. So Zone A is 2/3 the length of the future runway, and Zone A is the most restrictive, where even if anyone has property off airport property, they can't build any sort of homestead structure, building that's gonna congregate people. And then Zone B is 1/3 the length of the runway where those types of facilities are allowed, so long as the density of people populating there is less than 15 times the parcel acreage. So I would have to check where